We're going to start just talking about the Jubilee itself. When Stanton first wanted to celebrate the Jubilee of Dance, thanks to Margaret Alkek Williams for being the underwriter of this event for all these years. It's a great way to showcase the repertoire and the dancers. So for an audience to come to an evening and see every dancer on the stage, see every principal shine in a role either they're particularly known for or an audience favorite, and then as it's evolved, become also an evening that celebrates a world premiere. So I would just like for Stephen, Jessica, and Connor, since they've been here since the beginning of the Jubilee of Dance, to talk about how it's evolved and how you see it as a particularly important evening. So Stephen, why don't you start by talking about the first Jubilee of Dance and what it's like in the planning and the execution of all the repertoire that the audience sees.
Well, it's a huge undertaking actually, because it's also during the time when we do Nutcracker, which is also a huge undertaking with so many casts and lots of children. And even in Ben's version there was a lot of children, I think, so it's always been very difficult. So it's like little snippets of things. And also, I think Stan is happiest when he's choreographing, to be honest. And so at that time when it started, it wasn't his Nutcracker, it was Ben's Nutcracker, so he didn't have much to do. So he loves to choreograph, and he'd do a full company work at the end for the third act would be a piece by him. And nearly every year he did a new piece. And so the organisation of that, though, we always say when we're doing a normal program that we're always 3 ballets ahead. We always have to be 3 ballets ahead for the next 2 or 3 programs starting, and it takes a lot of time. There's a lot of homework, night after night, learning repertoire so we can teach the dancers what to do. But this, of course, is like 12 different ballets, small parts, but still you still have to learn it all and get it together and find the time, the hours. There never seems to be enough hours to do all these rehearsals while you're also rehearsing the different casts of Nutcracker, because you can't just stop that and go on to something else. The other performances of Nutcracker may be new principals or new soloists doing a principal role have not been rehearsed yet. So while all these other rehearsals are going for the gala, you have to fit in the other things. So you're here all day, and for me personally and the other ballet staff, there's a lot of preparation beforehand. So and we're organising it months in advance. It's not something we just do 1 month beforehand. It's worked out really 6 months beforehand what we're thinking of doing. May not be finalised, but we're coming up with the plans and who's going to teach what and all of that kind of thing. Yeah.
Connor and Jessica, do you have any favorite Jubilee memories over the past 20 years that you'd like to share?
Well, I'll just talk generally while Jessica maybe can think of something specific. I think my favorite part of the Jubilee is always to watch my colleagues shine, right? It's often a moment where people get to pull out their specialty, right? You get to see the individual artist really express themselves with all these excerpts, as Stephen was talking about. And so that's, a lot of the highlights over the years. There's kind of either watching people in their element, because the casting is often done, okay, how can we celebrate Jessica? What does Jessica do so great? And she'll do something from that. So you're watching a lot of people do what they do best. And so I think a lot of my great memories come down to just seeing my peers kind of excel and knock it out of the park. And there's always great energy from the audience because it's a one-night thing. And so that sense of event and that sense of, I think as a performer when it's a one-night show, you just leave it out there, right? Like you've got to just go for it. So there's an energy to the performers that I think is unique on that occasion as well. So it brings out some special moments.
Connor summed it up pretty well. I do think Stanton's curated and made all of these ballets that were specifically done for the gala. And oftentimes in these pieces, he would give these little solos to all of us, and they would be kind of curated for our strengths and our styles. So it did give us all a chance to shine. And because oftentimes we do excerpts from other pieces, maybe it was an opportunity to do a new role that you wouldn't have done it otherwise. I did Julie's part in Clear for the first time in the gala. It was an excerpt.
See, that was the first step I ever did with Stanton, ever. Walked in the studio and he just said, that, and take his hand. I was like, I'm with my people. Yes, I'm so glad. It's a beautiful part of it. Stephen, you want to just share what we're going to do on this year's Jubilee, to give a little teaser?
Yes, well, there might be some photos of it up there. Well, of course, we have to do some things that show off our wonderful two principals here. So, of course, we're doing Madame Butterfly, which I was very fortunate to be in the original cast as Goro. And so I've taught that ballet, apart from dancing it myself, to these people, actually, when they first did it. So, Madame Butterfly, of course. And then also Hush for Jessica, which is this fantastic ballet by Christopher Bruce, and you've done a couple of different roles in that ballet, yes. Well, she's playing the mother this time, and wonderful solo. And then, of course, The Merry Widow, which is a personal favourite of mine. I think it might be a personal favourite of yours too, actually, to showcase, and Julie's also danced this role. And I get the opportunity of teaching this in many different places, so it's one of my favourites. So that. And then, of course, we have things that we've done in the past season and things that we're maybe going to do, well, definitely some of them we're going to do, like Sleeping Beauty, like to show off what we're going to do in the next program. So Lightning Round was a very successful ballet by Dwight Roden this season, and so we're doing the finale of that, all little snippets of that. Little Dancer was something I was actually the ballet master on that, and that's by James Kadalka from Canada, and he did a ballet that was based on different levels. So the first level was the men jumping very high, the second level was the women and the men dancing in a long line, standing, and then the third one was on the floor, and that's the pas de deux, which we've done before a long time ago now, but we did it in the gala once. And so that's Little Dancer. Manon is a gorgeous ballet by Kenneth McMillan. We just did one of his ballets, Myling, recently, and this is a stunning solo and pas de deux from that. Filigree in Shadow is by another fellow Australian, actually, but who I used to dance with, called Tim Harbour, and he's a very energetic, contemporary choreographer, and I think everyone loved working with him. And Bespoke and Tutu are ballets we did this last program, and they're actually first done on the San Francisco Ballet, but they've come to us and they've settled very nicely on this company. And they show different feelings of the ballet. Tutu is by gorgeous Ravel music, and the costumes are inspired by the painter Glint. I know it's Klimt, I say that wrong. But anyway, they're inspired by that, and they're about different types of dancers. You know, one's very energetic, one's kind of maybe feeling a little bit on the outside. Anyway, we're doing the second movement to that, if I'm right. And Bespoke is something we did quite recently, and I watched the rehearsal of it today, actually, and it's a fun and joyous ballet, but apparently we're seeing the first movement of that, which is quite joyous, but apparently it's really about dancers feeling about their consolidated timeline of when you become a dancer, and then it's over, but the dance continues, but your time is very special and kind of short. And that's the background to that one. And I think that thing. And of course, we have Bolero, which we haven't done since 2011, but I actually remember it from the first time in 2004. And I just got here actually. It was my first, well, I think I'd been here 1 year, but I wasn't in charge of it, so I was kind of looking in on it. And looking back, because Ian and I have been reproducing it now, looking back at the videos of it and seeing all the people that have come and gone in the company was kind of sad and happy and sad. And then reproducing it on different dances, because Stanton, like he does when we do all these different galas, he really choreographs on the dancer. But this one was transposing somebody else's steps on other people, so that was kind of interesting. So that's, and of course, Brett's wonderful new ballet, so we've got lots of things to look forward to.
Oh, thrilling. So Brett, welcome to Houston Ballet. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you, Julie.
You're so welcome, and we'd love to share with our audience that may not know some of your background and sort of your journey from the California and the beautiful, it sounds idyllic life of your family's farm in California to become a dancer and choreographer and coming here to Texas.
Okay. Well, so I grew up in a small town, agricultural town called Porterville, and my grandparents had a small farm in the area, a Japanese-American descent. I'm Yonsei, 4th generation, and so I grew up working with my family on this farm, and I was a hyper kid, so my mom thought, oh, maybe we should put her in dance. So I did, and I loved it, but there wasn't a lot happening in this area. Not a lot of arts. I don't even think there was a Nutcracker or anything like that. So I eventually then went to Kuroff Academy. That's in DC,
And that's where Connor studied as well.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Such a small world.
Yeah. So that was just after the sort of the Cold War, when the Russian teachers were able to leave Russia, and a lot of them, they founded sort of a satellite Kirov Academy in Washington, D.C., and it just recently closed after sort of 25 years. So for those students that were there in the early days, it was really meaningful and a lot of incredible teachers, and it produced a lot of really impressive dancers. But it was sort of a very specific period of time. So you went to the Kirov Academy, and then you went to School of American Ballet as well?
I did, yes.
In New York City, that's the School of New York City Ballet.
Yes. And then after that, then joined a company, and danced professionally for some time before going back to school. So I went to UCLA, and I earned a bachelor's in literature, and I also studied ancient Greek, added Greek philosophy and poetry, and that's because I wanted to have a better understanding of the origin of Western civilization and arts and culture. So in particular, ancient Greek tragedy and how that was born. So that's late 6th century BCE. And then given I was at UCLA, I also thought I should take some film classes. So I spent a lot of my time, extra classes in film, film directing, screenwriting. So that whole combination now has definitely informed my process and how I built Ishida, my company. I was thinking that I really wanted to create works that a modern audience could relate to, and through a narrative though, and strong emotions, but also something that was cinematic and just visually alluring, all driving that particular narrative and context. I was commissioned then, once I started my company, commissioned outside of the company, and here we are.
And so tell us the concept and the inspiration behind your piece. What I was thinking while I was waltzing.
Dot, dot, dot.
Yeah.
So I think all of my work, are there pictures here?
Yes. A few lovely pictures from rehearsal.
The origin of this is from a personal experience. So all my work it's highly personal, but then I think this hasn't just affected me. This is universal. I think everyone is going to get this. So the concept here, the narrative for this, is, I think we've all been in a situation where we were disillusioned. So that could be within your family, it could be at work, it could be an intimate relationship. And so how do you reconcile that? And so I thought to create two different worlds that juxtapose each other. And the waltzing world, where this fabulous dress comes from, which is, you look at that, what comes to mind? It's formal, very regal, elegant. Also, in a waltz, the dancers are actually in this ballroom stance called being in frame. And there is kind of a rigidity to it. It's quite lovely and beautiful. So they start in this world, but then they're also going to break out of it, and we're going to go into their thoughts, into the dancers' thoughts here. And so that world, then the dancers wear this, and this world with the movement, because I was also trying to create. Yes, there's two different worlds. You see, they're very different ideas here, just costume-wise. But with the movement, the architecture in the style of the movement is quite different. We go from a very upright, rigid waltzing to this organic, grounded, fluid world where the characters get to express everything that they want to in this.
And tell us how it has felt to be working with the Houston Ballet dancers and to have had Stephen in the room with you. And it must be very different than sort of in a room where you're responsible for everything from turning on the lights to making everything possible, to come into an organization where you have so much support.
And the resources are. Stephen's fabulous. He's been wonderful. Just walking into the building, this is a beautiful space. All the people that help it make so smooth the creation process. Your leadership and support, the dancers and the guests coming in is really wonderful to have. So all of this is conducive for creation, and the dancers are just incredible. They are so eager to learn a different style and experiment and journey through the process. Maybe it was the first day or two. So I talk with the dancers, we dialogue, that's also a big part of the process. And so I asked them questions, I told them about the narrative, the context, and asked them, what are your thoughts? Has this ever happened to you? And they were so vulnerable, and they thought about it, and they all were like, yes, and I asked them, to share if they felt comfortable, and so many of them shared their own personal experiences, and it was just, they were all just very, very, very honest, and and then we talked about, well, how can you use your, that experience and bring it forth into this movement, and share that and be able to channel that in a healthy way. And they're all very, I think, excited and curious to utilize their own experiences and bring this here. And I am just really proud of them.
So, for those of you that may not know, it's generally our practice to allow the choreographer to have the opportunity to work with anyone in the company. So everyone, all the dancers are in the room with the choreographer, and so everybody brings what they have, and it's a learning experience for everyone. But one question that I think a lot of people, including myself, have is how much of the choreography do you come in with, and how much is responsive to the artists that are with you in the room? And each choreographer has a different process. I've worked with the full range that have the whole ballet, you can tell in their brain, and they're just trying to carve it out of your body. And then you have the choreographers that are completely relying on you to respond to their ideas, to respond to their musicality, and it's so much more of an exchange rather than a carving out of, I see it in my brain, I need you to do this, and that. And so tell us a little bit about how your process usually is, and if it was different or similar working with our company.
Yeah, well, I do start with a script that looks like a play, and I always do that. And within that play, it's mapped out the music, and I have lighting and ideas of this is a solo, this is a pas de deux, and that ties in. So there's those that structure, and then what the motivations are too, why they're dancing together. There's always what's happening and the why, and that's what's shared with the dancers, and then choreographically, I mean, I do have fixed movement that I come in with, and that I start with, and then that's how I'm able to then see and get to know and learn about the dancers too, and how they move and how they're interpreting what I've given them, which I find interesting and fascinating. So much of the choreography is then tied to, there's this romantic, pas de deux, for instance, and then more of the work then is built as I get to know the dancers, but there are definite images already set that I can see, and certain these costumes where I sketch them, I'll draw everything out usually, and it's very mapped out in that regard. But what's fascinating and what you never know, and I love this, is referring back to the dancers. Once you share that context, you don't know what's happened to them. You don't know their background, their life experience, and that's what's so surprising and unique. It's what they're gonna do with that, given their own history, and that I do love to encourage, because I want them to have a voice, and I want to see their history, if they're willing to share that and be open. So it's what then brings all of you in and interested into the work, is when the dancers are so open and 100% or 1,000% lost in the world and in the dance.
Yeah. I think some of the surprises or mysteries of the creative process are really kind of the best part. And I just remember James Kudelka, I worked with him at ABT and created several pieces with us, and you know, there are some dancers that, well, they just want to make sure they're doing it right, and so they ask a lot of questions. Is this on point, or is this that? And he would just always say, I don't know, I've never seen it before. And I thought that was, you know, that was he didn't know, like, I don't have an answer for that question. This is a process. There's a mystery, there's unknowns, and let's just see and do it on point, do it not on point. So it's like big picture, little picture, and then the responsiveness. But anyway, that's I love to hear about all of your process, and all of it. None of it's a surprise to me. It all sounds like it fits in your background and all of your education and life experience. So, Jessica, I would love to hear about your relationship with Christopher Bruce and his choreography, and sort of how that has played a role in your career, Houston Ballet.
Sure. So much like these processes that we were kind of just talking about, it was our first year in the company, and I think it had been some time since Christopher Bruce had worked with the dancers, and Stanton had taken over. There was a lot of turnover. There was a lot of new faces that he had never seen, and we had a rehearsal like this where everybody was in the room and material was taught, and it's kind of like even playing field for everybody. And he kind of got to get to know us, and he, I think, took a leap of faith and decided to cast this apprentice girl. We were doing Rooster at the time. And it was a huge moment for me, because I was like, oh my gosh, this, I remember going into the bathroom stall and crying. It was a very Black Swan moment, I'm sure. But I had the best time, and I feel like his work is a type of movement and language that I can relate to, and I find in my body easily. And he was resident choreographer at the time, and he still will do his works every so often, so he's kind of been this constant throughout my career, and we've done so many works of his that I have special places in my heart for. Intimate Pages was another really special one. Yes, and Hush too, which was a work that he created here. I started at as the older sister, and I've now graduated to the mother role, which is very fitting. Yeah, it's a beautiful little solo, but yeah, his works has been special.
And Connor, like Jessica, we've all had the great privilege of watching your development and strength in such a wide range of roles here. And so tell us why both Madame Butterfly and Married Widow are going to be special for you. Why do you think we picked them for you to dance?
Maybe because I got cut from that cast. I'll call from Christopher Bruce. No. I did, but it is. But no, I can't get into your guys' head why you thought that was what I should do. But I think throughout my career, I've always enjoyed dancing with somebody more than I've loved dancing by myself. I don't dislike dancing by myself, but sharing that experience and collaborating with a fellow performer, and throughout the entire process, not just the performance, but the whole process is something that you share. It's something that you share in each other's little victories, and there's so much communication, and I find it more gratifying to share that experience. So I think to dance two pas de deux with two beautiful ballerinas is a great honor to me. I find that to tell stories, is something that I've always been drawn to. It's part of why I've been so happy to spend my career at Houston Ballet, because we've not just done great contemporary work, but we've also I think this company's always been a great storytelling company. That, you know, from the Ben Stevenson days, that Kenneth McMillan has such a rich history with this company, to then Stanton taking over and developing our own narrative full-length ballets. So I've always been drawn to dancing with people. I've always been drawn to telling stories, and these two ballets that I'm getting to dance, besides Bolero, of course, are beautiful stories. One slightly more tragic than the other, so we're getting to show some different shades of things. But you know, getting to do something I love to do very much.
Do you feel like your approach to partnering and dancing pas de deux work how has it changed over the years?
I mean, it changes every day. You know, every person you dance with is different, right? And I think you have, as a dancer, you have to love constant growth, right? You have to constantly be educating yourself. You have to constantly be learning, because not only are you doing new dances all the time, your body's different all the time. Every morning feels different, so you're constantly learning how to do it again. You're pushing yourself all the time. And I think partnering is very much like that. Each new person I dance with and each new ballet that I get to dance teaches me something more. And so that's why I've always been so hungry, you know, my whole career, because I always, you know, you just want to experience as many things as possible because they all teach you something. And so always thankful for that, but every day is a new day, and every day comes with new lessons, especially when it comes to partnering.
I have to say something. When I first saw them, they were at the school, these two, and you came up to and asked me about Bluebird or something, because that's the role I did a lot. And anyway, I saw their rehearsal. I saw him rehearsing first, and I thought that he had such a natural talent at pas de deux. Like, it's not everyone has that talent. It's for instance, I enjoyed dancing more by myself. It was opposite to you. The pressure of having to worry about somebody else, where you felt
It calms me. It has the
naturally
opposite.
comfortable with it. And you know, when you first got into the company, you danced with Lauren Anderson doing a gala, I think it was a gala or something, doing Dog Q. And that's the pressure on a young guy, and you did it so well. And I just say, I love these two. They've got wonderful, the maturity they had at the school. That's why you got into these roles, because of your natural artistry that came through. So, you know, I've always enjoyed that from you both, really. But the partnering with you is a really special talent that not everyone has. You have it.
Thanks.
So, Stephen, why don't you continue on that train of thought and just share with all of us some of the highlights of the past 20 years that you feel like have been, like, you know, things that really stick in your heart and mind about.
Right, well, forgetting my own dance career, because that's had its own things, and you never saw any of that. But so coming here was a big change for me. Actually, I was telling, we were having dinner together, and I finished dancing in 2003, December 2003, and I started here in January 14th, 2004. So I only had a couple of weeks from being on the stage and being told what to do to being suddenly in front of dancers I didn't know, and staff that I didn't know, and a whole organisation that doesn't know me or what I've done. And so you have to kind of prove yourself again. And so and then the first thing Stan is, why don't you go and do the grandfather in Nutcracker? And I was so nervous because, you know, being on staff and then suddenly being thrown on stage, and, you know, what if I'm terrible at it? And, you know, because I don't know their version and all this kind of stuff. So, so the change from being a dancer to being in charge of something, or being in charge of with 60 people in front of you, was quite a big thing. But the wonderful things is that I've got to do, I used to really look up to my ballet staff, actually. Some of them were a bit scary, but basically most of them are very, very nice, and particularly in the Sydney Opera House, there's a canteen where we all 8 together, so I'd often, just because they were interesting, talk to some of them. And so it was always my thing to be, well, I hope if I get to do some character work when I get older, because I always wanted to be a ballet master, actually. It's not something I thought, oh, I'll do that now. I actually wanted to do it because I knew them and I knew how hard they worked and how difficult it is, but it seemed very fulfilling just to stage a ballet and to see, I mean, I didn't choreograph it, but to restage the thing and put it on and tell everyone what the character of it all and everything, it's very fulfilling in the end. You go, oh, I did that. That's, you know, they have to do it, but I gave them the information, and or I hope I gave them the right information, or whatever. So I think when I first got to stage ballet, which was actually Madame Butterfly in Singapore, that was the first time I got to teach everything. I taught from the little kid that comes on to the big pas de deux to all the group stuff. I thought that was a big challenge, and I was nervous about it, but then when it came through, it was such a moment. And I mean, I like to dance all the roles. I don't so much now, but I like to dance absolutely all the roles. I did every single role. I did another thing was Merry Widow, actually, and I'd grown up with that ballet. I saw it. I saw the premiere in 1975. I was just a kid, but I saw it, and so you know, I had the record. My grandmother bought me the record, so I danced around the house to it. Like, literally, I was that kind of a kid, playing around, dancing around to it and everything. So, and then when I got to come here, and then we were going to stage it, and I knew Ronnie Hine because of we'd done it in Australian Ballet. I had done the lead role, I did lead Pontevedrian, I did the head waiter, I did, you know, all those kind of roles. But I thoroughly enjoyed the whole thing, and then he said, you were the most entertaining. I did it in Argentina, you know, about five years ago. And he just sat back as I did every single character of the third act. He said, it's hysterical, it was just so funny. It was like a cabaret show. And I did, you know, the head waiter, and I did Camille, and I did Valencian, and I did things. Very funny. So those kind of things are very enjoyable. And I've actually had the pleasure of working with so many different choreographers and stagers, people who restage ballets from other companies, and you know, some of them I'd actually worked with when I was a dancer back in Australia, like Jean-Pierre Frolic, you know, things like that. And then suddenly, now I'm a friend of his, and that's kind of nice. And you know, you build this kind of relationship with people. You know, I was thinking about other people that we've had here from ABT and Vicky Simons, who I've known forever, and all these kind of things. So working with those people, and the pleasure of seeing dancers that you knew from a school age coming up, and some of them don't stay here, they go to other places, but you know, they're principals in, you know, like Chung Wei, principals in New York City Ballet, or principals here, or principals in other countries, and think, well, I have a little bit to do with that, or they may have thanked you sometimes. Sometimes you never see them again, but I think about them often, and getting to do character roles that, you know, my ballet masters used to do, like Widow Simone, or something I'm doing up there, I can't remember which one I'm doing, and still actually getting choreographed on by, what was that guy? Arthur Peter doing Good Vibrations. I mean, being in the ballet again, being choreographed on again. So you never know, it can go on forever.
Well, your portrayal of the King and Cinderella goes down in my mother's books of one of the great performances. She just thought you were wonderful. Jessica, why don't you share some of your just takeaways from 20 years at Houston Ballet, how it has affected you as an artist, a person, you know. All those things are the same thing, but yeah.
No, we're good. It's hard. I mean, that's what's been so nice about this little Jubilee is that we talked about this, it's a chance to be like, oh, and you look back, you're like, there's a lot of things that I've done, a lot of places we've been, and I feel like as dancers we're always kind of in the now, and then what's next, and the now, and what's next. So it's a time to reflect, which is fun. And it's hard to narrow down specific events. I think my career probably has been shaped by choreographers giving me a chance, or and Stanton's done that since the beginning. He's given me these ballets to grow in, these characters, these stories to tell, and I think that's just made me a bigger artist and storyteller and actress. These contemporary choreographers who just, you know, mold you and mold you and mold you because they know they can get more and more and more out of you, and then you walk away a new dancer and a better dancer, and then you take that experience with you to the next ballet. I think it's all of those moments that continue to build and shape who I've become, I guess, over time. Yeah.
Are there any specific either people or dancers that you feel like have sort of been particularly impactful in your development?
I mean, when we were young, the principals, they were from Ben's era, and he was such a strong storyteller and really, really valued that as an artist. I remember Stanton choreographed Pecos Bill early on in our careers, and I would watch Lauren and Julie do this coyote pup role, which is, I mean, she's technically a dog, a coyote, and being like in tears because of the story they were telling. So I think stuff like that, looking up to them, to Barb, to Mimi, these real artists who valued that so much, that changed you, made you feel something, and I was like, oh, I want to do that. I want to be that and do that to other people. Yeah.
And Connor, what about you? If you can share some of the sort of thoughts about the last 20 years and game-changing moments for you, or...
Yeah, it's been interesting. Jessica and I, again, talked about this, so sorry you're going to hear this again. I often, because I grew up here, right? I came through the school, I was in the school for 3 years. I still sometimes feel like the 18-year-old kid who joined the company, because I've sort of been waking up, coming to work, doing the same thing every day. So sometimes I've been working with Steven for 20 years, right? Like we're just, here we are, we're still doing it. And so it's something, sometimes I just feel like that same, you know, young guy who joined the company, and other days I don't. But so there is sort of this weird feeling looking back and thinking, oh my God, 20 years. Like I've been in this company longer than some of my colleagues have been alive. I mean, and this is a fact, like, yeah, I'm gonna sit on that for a second.
I have t-shirts older than you. My husband said that in rehearsal. It's like, yes, it happens.
Yeah. No, I think it's beautiful, and I, you know, if I think about highlights, I think the premieres that we've made, you know, Romeo and Juliet and La Bayadère and Marie Antoinette, and these big moments in the Nutcracker, in the company's history, to be a part of that is really meaningful for me, and it's just a great honor. And but I've also always felt, you know, I was fortunate to be promoted to principal at a very young age, and I think that also came with an immense amount of pressure, and this sense to live up to something or to continue to deserve that position. You know, you have good days and bad days, and there's always young, talented dancers coming up. That's part of the dance world, right? There's always like these fantastic dancers that come out of the school from all over the world, and so you're constantly having to push yourself and constantly having to ask, like, what can I offer that is different, that is equally or if not more valuable than, you know, that talented 18-year-old kid who has all the gifts in the world. And so I think when I am thinking back, I think a lot of the most special moments to me are actually like, you know, when somebody like Steven, who's known me a long time, will just take the time, you know, pull aside and say, hey, like, this was really great. And, you know, or a young dancer pulled me aside the other day and just said, hey, you know, this performance meant so much to me, and I just want to let you know that, like, those are the moments that stand out more, to me, more than like any sort of big accomplishment, or it's like an intimate connection where you feel like your artistry or your performance touched somebody. And I think I value the opinion, no offense to you guys, I value the opinion of the people I work with so greatly. You know, they're the ones who you're trying to impress the most when you're out on stage. And so whenever you feel like you've won them over, like that's, to me, it's worth, you know, well, anything in the world to me. So that's, when I think about highlights and things like that, it's a lot of moments, it's a lot of relationships, it's a lot of like, but it's just little moments that I will always treasure, you know.
When you think about the legacy that you will leave Houston Ballet, what is it that you would like for it to be, and how dancers of the future will perceive your contribution to the company? That's for all three of you. What? Oh, they're not going anywhere. It's a big, but everybody has a legacy. They're not going anywhere. It's just after 20 years, you've made a huge contribution. What do you want people, when they talk about Jessica and Connor and Stephen, dancers of the future, how would you write that script, you know?
I'll take it if you want. Okay. I think about, as Jessica was saying, she thinks about, you know, Mimi Hassenbowler and Barbara Bears, and she thinks about those ballerinas a lot, and I have those people that I think about a lot. I think about that coach who told me that, and I think about that dancer who taught me that, and I learned how to do that from them. So more than anything, you know, like, we've gotten to do a lot of new works, a lot of really special moments, and the repertoire has been cool, but for me, it's just, I hope that my performances or you know, whatever I've shared in the studio with my peers, or just that somehow what I've given is received, and that they kind of use that in some sort of way, because I'm sure as heck using other people's things that have inspired me. So, like, you know, I've held on to a lot of things from other people, and if somebody can hold on something that I've brought into the studio and stage, then I'd be happy.
Jess?
I think this is probably something that everybody on this panel here enforces and believes in as well. But I think it would be to remember that you're an artist first, that steps are steps, and you can execute the steps as great as you can, but I think your artistry is what will touch people, and that's important.
People remember how you made them feel, not whether you did a perfect double pirouette.
Exactly.
Stephen?
That's pretty much what I think too. I would hope that people will, you know, when their careers have ended and they think back at the times that they actually enjoyed their careers and enjoyed the time with me. I, 99% of the time, really enjoy working in the studio with the dancers and having a bit of a laugh too. I don't mind that. And but also disciplined. You know, you've got to come in and know your material. You've got to work hard. But I work hard, and you know, we expect them to work hard, but also to have some joy in it as well. It's a collaborative feel, and you enjoy it, I enjoy it, and also what you were saying about that it's not just steps. That I hope when I've had the opportunity of staging things, that it's not just about the steps, that it is about the character, and that, you know, like I think back at my ballet masters thinking, oh, he was so good in that, and when I watched him on stage, he brought so much out of that funny little character or something. So I hope that think, oh, well, Stephen used to be able to do that. Things like that. That there's no small roles, actually. All the roles are very important to make the production.
Beautiful. Well, before I open up to the audience for any questions, I just want to say a few personal words to each of you. Jessica and Connor, your work has changed people that you may never, ever meet in your whole life. And I think as an artist, that's one of the greatest rewards that you can have, to know that you've changed somebody. To Brett, your work as a choreographer has made dancers discover things about themselves that they never knew. And that kind of growth puts you on a trajectory that you can't even imagine. And Stephen, to have somebody guide you and believe in you and help you build yourself to go to the next level, to know that there's someone in your corner, to know that there's somebody who believes you can do something when you may not even believe it yourself. None of us can do any of that without each other. So, as somebody that spent my whole life in a ballet company, I'm so grateful for the experiences of all of you. I'm so proud of all of you. I'm so proud to be celebrating you and everything that you've done. So I'm happy to open it up to the audience so that you can ask any questions that you might have.
I'm so interested in the music and how does the music come before sometimes, or does the music come? How do you present the music for this and the music for that, and where do you find it? Did the music? When did the music come?
That's a good question. Thank you. I've loved these two pieces of music. The composer is Ezio Bosso, and it's full and rich and gorgeous, like the costume. I mean, and romantic, I think, energetic as well. Yes, and so lucky to have a live orchestra and a quartet. I'm excited we get to hear the quartet tomorrow. The dancers get to work with them, so that'll be great. So the music, I have a really long playlist of things that I've heard that I kind of keep and I log, and I also use a lot of music from film. I'm a huge film buff, and so and music that's composed for film often is very conducive for storytelling, right? And so, yeah, of course, since a lot of my work is narrative driven, and so that's a fantastic marriage. Yeah, so that's how these two pieces were just, I had them, and then when I when I talked to Julie about Jubilee and thinking about this is such a festive, this will really work for exactly knowing that there is going to be that Nutcracker facade. It was very intentional, everything, because I'm very visually oriented, and so I wanted to be like, this will go with that, and the cupids, there's this romantic thing, the cornucopias, so yes, it was all very mapped out for the context, I would say.
So, thank you all again. I look forward to seeing you on Friday. And thank you to our beautiful panelists for sharing. And thank you all for coming this evening. And thank you, Jasmine.